King Ademala stood beside a vast sea that stretched farther than his eyes could follow. The water looked calm, yet it moved with a slow, deliberate pull. At his side was his only horse, tall and powerful, its body adorned with royal cloth and beads of gold. The animal stood quietly as the king stroked its mane. "You are all I have that obeys me without question," the king said. Suddenly, something floated past on the surface of the water. A bag, heavy, bulging, its mouth tied tight. The king's eyes fixed on it. "Money," he whispered. "That could be my wealth." He stepped closer to the shore and reached out. The current pulled the bag farther away from him, the more he tried to reach out for it. "Come back," he said, stepping into the water. The horse followed him quietly and obediently, and without paying too much attention that the horse was also following the chase after the bag that wasn't his to begin, the rein of the horse jerked out of his hands and the sea roared. "No," he said absently. "Stay." But the water deepened. The current grew stronger. The bag spun and danced just beyond his reach. The horse slipped, its legs fighting the pull. "Hold on," King Ademala shouted, turning at last. The horse neighed loudly, struggling, then disappeared beneath the water. The royal cloth vanished with it. The sea became still again. The king screamed. He jumped up from his bed, gasping, his body soaked in sweat. He looked around the dark palace chamber, as if the sea might still be there. "Guards," he called. "Bring the priest. Wake him. Bring him now." The priest arrived before dawn, calm and unhurried, his cowries hanging from his neck. "Speak," the king said. "I dreamt of loss." The king narrated the dream and how it made him feel. Immediately, the priest knelt and cast his oracle. He studied the signs for a long time before lifting his eyes. "My king," he said, "you possess one thing more precious than gold, more valued than power. If you do not change your ways, if you continue to ignore the suffering beneath your rule, you will lose it." The oracle didn't say what I might lose. He asked, and the priest nodded positively. The king's face hardened. "So now you use my dream to threaten me," he said. "You think fear will soften my heart. I think warnings are gifts," the priest replied, "not punishments." "Enough," the king snapped. "Leave my sight. You are a fake, twisting dreams to gain favor." The priest bowed slowly. "I have spoken what the oracle revealed. Go," the king said, "before I make you regret your words." The priest left. By morning, the king dismissed the dream as weakness. Ignoring the warnings of the dream, kind Ademala continued with his way of life. That same day, two families were dragged before the palace. They knelt on the hard ground, trembling. "My king," one man said, his voice breaking, "our land fed our fathers. It feeds our children. Please spare it." The king leaned forward on his throne. "Those lands now belong to the crown," he said. "You have until sunset to leave." "We have nowhere to go," another man cried. "Mercy, my king." The king's eyes moved to the young girl standing behind them. "If you are still here by nightfall," he said calmly, "a daughter will serve in my palace. Decide wisely." The courtyard fell silent. The families fled without another word. They packed their belongings and left Ilupeju, as there was nothing left for them there. That was Ilupeju, the suffering, the injustice, and absolute tyranny before the righteous thief became not just a tale, but an actual reality. Every 3 nights, the land held its breath. Doors shut early. Lamps dimmed. Mothers pulled children close. The rich most especially tremble, guarding their houses and storerooms tightly. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, a shadow moved. He passed through the village like a whisper. He climbed walls. He slipped through the doors. He entered storehouses filled with food that had never touched the mouths of the hungry. Going from house to house of the rich, busting into their store homes, it all started with just grains and basic food items. By morning, yams lay at the market junction. Bags of grain, cloth-wrapped coins. The poor gathered in disbelief. "Who does this?" one woman asked, clutching rice to her chest. "Whoever he is," another replied. "May the ancestors protect him." And somewhere else, a wealthy man shouted in rage. "They stole from me again," he cried. "Find this thief." They called him the righteous thief. What no one knew was that the thief is just another man like everyone who returned to normal activities by day and blend with everyone. One evening, he sat with his mother. The king continued with illegal stealing from people. Income taxes went on the high side, and 70% of market produce ends up falling in the backyard of King Ademila and his greedy chiefs. The burden was too much, and poverty stretched farther in the land. One fateful evening, the chiefs gathered in the palace to discuss security measures for their stores until the thief is caught. My king, let us pay for private mercenary. All these slave-trained warriors are weak, Chief Oten suggested. By the next day, they all had guards fully clothed in charms and arms parading their houses and storehouses, but the unknown happened that evening. The palace was robbed instead. It was robbed to a noticeable point, as the king's storage is full enough to not even notice 22 bags of grain has gone missing. That evening, the thief has come, stole foods in wide quantity, but this time he didn't dump them at the market, but in the houses of people who paid rent to the king with the farm produce. They rejoiced silently, as the instructions on the bags says to not announce their gift. Yet rumors spread, as this people could not keep their joy to themselves, and when news got to the ear of the king, he was furious once again. My own subject are stealing from me. He commanded that all the family who got the food be arrested for execution and see if their savior will come and save them. After a week of imprisoning, then, with the righteous thief not showing up, King Ademila gave an order that their right hands be off and their children be sold as slaves to the rich. Yet, the righteous thief keeps stealing. The issue rendered the king sleepless, coupled with the fact that his crown prince has been on sick bed for weeks without recovery. Do you hear them at night? Prince Adebelu asked his mother while lying down. Hear who? She replied. The people, Adebelu said. Their hunger speaks louder than drums. She looked away. Your father believes fear keeps order. And does it? Adebelu asked. She had no answer. He groaned in pain. Don't worry, Prince. You'll get better soon. That night, the righteous thief climbed the palace wall again. For the people, he whispered as he carried grain into the dark. He returned every 3 nights. No guard ever saw him enter into the palace or notice the stealing until he is long gone. This time, having learned their lessons, the villagers kept their joy to themselves. Nobody speaks of the righteous thief or getting free gain because they know the risk is here. Now find him has proven more difficult. The rich are losing their foods and money, but they cannot trace it anymore. No more stories. People stopped yapping. Their commodities become untraceable and no one to blame. The rich gathered at the palace. This cannot continue, one chief said. Our storehouses are no longer safe. We are being mocked, another added. The poor laugh at us. The king slammed his staff on the floor. Find him, he said. I want his head before Ogun. The chiefs bowed. It will be done. At the same time, Adebelu withdrew from public life totally as his illness got worse by each passing day. He is ill, the palace announced. One of the chiefs mentioned a powerful healer who lives in another neighboring village, and he believes in his power. We have sent word for him, Your Majesty, but it will take him another 5 days to get here. The king felt relief, and the chiefs dispersed. The queen sat beside Prince Adebelu's bed. You must stop, she whispered. If I stop, he replied softly, who will act? The next day, a stranger entered Ilupeju. His name was Oropo. He looked like a trader who came into money as he exudes serious wealth. He marched into the town with horses, camels, lots of slaves and properties, and his family. He greeted traders. He spoke with farmers. He visited the market and familiarized with everyone except the rich. He bought a house near the market and settled close to the bubbling business place of Ilupeju. One day, he threw a banquet inviting the poor only. He fed the poor and beggars. Everyone ate and was happy. A man ate and wept openly. I forgot what fullness felt like, he said. Word spread quickly. The chiefs were offended. He has not paid homage, one said. Yet he feeds the people. Oropo was summoned. My king, he said, bowing, my family believes wealth grows when shared. I apologize for not coming to greet you sooner. I just believe there was no king in a town with so much poverty. What insolence! Are you saying our king is ineffective? Chief Oten cautioned. Oropo fell to his knees. "How can I say that to the deputy of the gods? I'm sorry, my king," he apologized. The king studied him. "Be careful. Generosity draws attention." "I have nothing to hide," Oropo replied. The thief continued. "Not just the palace. He emptied the rich's houses and that of the chiefs on different occasions. The only rich man he never stole from was Oropo. Oropo provided a lot of work with the farms he started. His wages were 3 times bigger than what the landowners in Ilupeju paid their workers. Majority started hustling to work in Oropo's farm. The rich returned in anger to the palace to complain. "He pays our workers too well," they complained. One chief leaned in. "Perhaps he is the thief." The king said nothing, but his eyes lingered. That night, the chiefs gathered and whispered plans among themselves. Chief Oten had a plan to catch Oropo, the prime suspect. "The Agbaran deity," he said. "It tracks by scent. If he worships," another added, "the spirit will know him. All we need to do is to get him to worship the deity at the festival in 2 days' time. It will record his scent, and we will send it after the righteous thief, Oropo, before morning cries will be heavy in his compound." They all nodded in approval. The plan was sealed. The festival came. Drums filled Ilupeju. Wine flowed. Danchir spawn. Oropo worshipped openly as he was invited with honor. The king smiled and spoke kindly. "Your good deeds honor this land." Later, the royal household worshipped last, as it is mandatory for every member of the royal house, as well even Oropo was covered and carried to not attract attention that will cause rumor. The night after the Agbaran festival was quiet, streets were empty. That night, the queen screamed. "Adebelu," she cried. "Help me." The prince struggled for breath as he vomits blood while a strange shadow kept on choking him. The king rushed in. "My son, hold on." Adebelu looked at him and whispered, "How can a crown prince watch his people suffer and do nothing?" Then he was still. The herbalist who was called arrived at that time and cast the oracle to solve the sudden death mystery. The chiefs were summoned to the palace. The truth fell like thunder. The prince was killed by a deity the king himself worshipped. Confusion filled the room. The oracle spoke again. "The one who steals for the poor lives in the palace." Silence swallowed the hall. The king understood. The queen understood. Adebelu had been the thief. Grief shattered the king. He wept openly, asking why his son would sacrifice himself for common people. The queen's grief turned to rage. She accused the king of cruelty. She said Adebelu was never sick. He hid his wounds from the night. The people learned the truth. They stormed the palace, furious and heartbroken. They demanded justice. In Ilupeju, when a member of the royal house did not die a natural death, the killer must be found and killed, and that does not exclude fellow members of the royal house. Even kings answer to the law, and King Ademela must answer to his. King Ademela remembered his dream and warnings of the priest he sent away. He has truly lost the one thing he cherished because of his greed. Crushed by grief and shame, the king ended his own life before the town came for him. The chiefs who plotted were also executed publicly. Tyranny ended. The land slowly healed. And though Prince Adebelu was gone, his story lived on. In Ilupeju, they say justice once wore a crown and walked at night.